Miss
Kris Burke.
Kris
Hi,
Burke.
everybody.
If you enjoy the show and you like the information that we are sharing, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Today's topic: how long do you have to carry your grief? Everybody take a deep breath.
Yeah. Oh, good. It's a light one today.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Kris, like we start out almost all of our shows, where does grief fall on our Masterful U map?
Yeah. Let's see our map, please. And I don't think very many people who've been watching are going to be surprised. Thanks so much to see that grief is right there in zone one. It's part of our instincts, right? So when we suffer a loss, um, of any sort, then there's a reconciliation process that needs to happen. We need to come to resolution to be able to be at peace with the transition that we're in, and with the loss, whatever that is. And that is not an instantaneous thing, but it's good to see that grief is one of those zone one feelings, and so when we're in zone one, we wouldn't expect ourselves to be thinking at our best, right? Our minds are not the sharpest, and our intuition and inspiration are pretty inaccessible when we're in that zone.
Yes, that's why, especially we were talking yesterday about expected grief and unexpected grief.
Hmm.
And expected grief is something, there's books and blogs and shows and all that about. And one of the big things that they recommend is not making any life changing decisions when you're in those first few weeks, months of grief.
Yeah,
And that's because you're in zone one.
yeah, absolutely. And in zone one, we have rituals for expected grief. So, we're every cultural group or family group, religious group has their rituals, if you will, wakes and funerals and cooking meals for, families, the loved ones who are suffering the loss. Checking in, sort of doing a tag team with friend groups to make sure, or relative groups to make sure that someone's kind of there to ease that very brutal beginning transition. So we have that in place. Um, and that works for a lot of people pretty well. But I know a lot of people who suffer grief say, but there's a period at which people say, well, you're probably fine now.
Hmm.
We got you through the hard part, which was some number of days, weeks, months, whatever it is that people think is expected for that grief period. And what's really hard is that everybody's there to help you in the beginning, and then they kind of disappear. People go back to their lives, and you're left there with these feelings that have yet to be processed, and the reality of, your new truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everybody's going to be like, God, I'm so tired of that spiky head chick talking about her mother dying. But
No one
um,
is thinking that.
when my mother died, she had been sick for a period of time, a long period of time, years. And it was something where, you know, was it a shock? Not necessarily, but she was young
Mhm.
and we didn't know a lot about lupus or anything like that. So, when she did die, it was, you can tell yourself they've been sick and I'm prepared. I've been preparing myself for it for months. In my experience, that's some bullshit
Yeah.
because it didn't matter. This person, this void, and it was just there. It was like
Mhm.
a sucking hole.
Yeah.
And in the events that followed right after her, you're so right because you just kind of go into that survival mode of, okay, this is what we have to get through.
Mhm.
And, everybody means well. Everybody wants to come and comfort you. I can't tell you how many people I held as they sobbed in my arms because my mother died.
Absolutely.
And, which oddly enough gave me comfort
Mhm.
because my mother meant that much to them.
Mm.
And they saw how special she was. So in that moment, that's what worked for me.
Mhm.
But when that was gone, and like you said, everybody goes back to their life, it's like, how can you continue to live your life? My mother's gone.
Right.
What are you talking? How do you do this? How do you move forward? And that's, the expected stages of grief. You go through anger. And I was funny looking at the map. I mean, those are the stages:
Mhm.
anger, acceptance, and then you find some peace
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
Now, my question is, how long do you have to carry your grief? Does grief ever leave?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as let's take it through the map, right? So yeah, and people are going to get sick of, this person saying, "Let's take it through the map." But that's what Chris says, because that's what I do. So let's start out with you're in grief. Let's use your mom because your mom helps us out here a lot. So you're in that initial stage of grief. Well, let's talk about when you get to the anger stage. What are you back up? I also like to jump ahead. Talk about what are you thinking, feeling, and doing when you're in the grief stage just after your mom has gone?
Guilt, all of those things: shame, guilt, blaming myself,
Mm,
hopelessness. How am I supposed to move on without her? Regret. I should have done this. I should have done that. And how could I have made things different? It was my job to save her and rehab her, and I didn't do it.
yeah.
And all of those, just that cycle. One, if I stopped feeling guilty, then I was feeling the regret. It was like just that loop of all of those zone one emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Perfect. Perfect. And when you got to anger, so we can see the anger, this is like it's dragging you down, right? This
Mhm.
is heavy stuff. And you're feeling like you're in an emotional washing machine. Is that a, yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's spin cycle. It's just getting more and more and more violent.
Yeah. Exactly. And at some point, something rises up and it's like, okay, I can't do this. And you start moving into anger, which anger doesn't feel super good, but it's way better than the washing machine. So talk about the anger. What are you thinking, feeling, doing when you're at the anger level?
Yeah, I feel like zone one emotions were all directed toward me.
Mhm.
When I slid into that zone two, anger, the finger wasn't pointing in anymore. I was angry at everybody else. Pick the person, it was, I had a pretty good target or two because of what was going on after my mother died, that were very easy targets for me to channel all of my anger to.
Mhm. Wasn't my fault, it was theirs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not even their fault, but okay, I'm angry, so I'm going to take it out on whatever it is you're doing now.
Yeah.
Just, a place in my mind, a justified place. I am justified to feel this anger
Yes.
at
Yeah.
you.
Yes, and at that time, not consciously, but certainly there is a part of you that understands if you let go of that anger, what's going to happen.
You go back into zone one.
There you go. You're back in the washing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that anger is helpful. Um, as long as we are able to have that self awareness, which is one of the things that we talk about here, so that we self regulate, right? So that we don't act out on that anger, but that we understand this is a normal part of the transition. And anger is actually when we're starting to get back to ourselves. We're in the process of getting back to ourselves.
Yeah, it's funny that you say to ourselves because you and I have talked about this.
Mm,
Everything in my life, it's like before Christ and after Christ, before my mother died and after my mother died.
mhm.
Because after my mother died, I was a completely different person than I was before. There was a lot of, um, Maddie and I call it real life street cred. That real life pains because, all in all, my life growing up until the point of me losing my grandfather actually died 6 months before my mother,
Mm,
which was devastating.
mm.
And then my mother died 6 months after my grandfather, and my grandmother died 10 days after my mother.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the first big loss I experienced, I had just turned 26, which,
Mm,
so for 20-25 years, I lived a pretty painless, I will say, for the most part,
mm.
um, life. Of course, I put myself through all kinds of hell, but as far as grieving the loss of loved ones, that was, I was, pretty clear of that until this.
Mm.
So after that, I was a different person.
Absolutely. And you kind of got it machine gun style, right? So it was
Yes.
just all of a sudden, oh, welcome to loss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I had lost my uncle 4 months prior, I mean 4 years prior,
Mm,
but he had had a long, painful cancer thing. So again, it's not like you can prepare yourself for it, but with him, it was so painful that everybody was grateful that he wasn't suffering anymore.
right.
And he was my uncle. I loved him, but the connections weren't the same that I had with my grandparents and my mom.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, it was all the same side of the family. My
Huh.
entire all red side of was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
So how long did this anger phase last?
well, um, like I said, the alcohol helped prolong the anger phase.
Yeah.
So, a good 2 years,
Mm,
maybe a little more,
yeah.
if we're being honest. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's pretty that's not unusual. That in fact it can go on, we can still be carrying some of the anger, um, 50 years forward,
Yeah.
if until we go through the process of exploring that and bringing it up and making peace with it. Um, but certainly the intense anger phase can keep us from being able to function um, very well, right? It's hard to make relationships. It's hard to um, have peace in your life when you're walking around angry all the time.
Yeah. Feeling like a ticking time bomb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So then you start to get into an acceptance um, mindset, and maybe a little bit of optimism that life could be different. Certainly the hole that your mother and family members left is not going to be filled, but maybe you can build a life that has some light and love in it and some joy in it in a different way. So at some point that enters. What was that like?
A lot of the glimmers of light and hope I saw were with my niece. My niece was 3 or 4 when my mom died. And then my sister had my nephew. So it was that innocence, the love that they come with, and being able to uh, really pour my love into someone and not fear that A, it'll be rejected, or B, that they were going to disappear anytime soon.
Yeah.
So that was what really helped open myself up to allowing myself to experience some joy again.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about animals? Did you have animals at this point? Dogs or
Oh, Kris, you're so funny. I come from a family that absolutely loves and adores all animals, and I love them and adore them when I am the animal aunt.
Ah,
I'm not an overzealous pet owner.
mm, yeah.
But I did have my Cocker Spaniel, Toby, who was the absolute best dog ever. And he was great. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people, this is a good thing to know when we're going through grief. we're in that anger stage, and we get to a point where we're kind of like, okay, I feel like I've played the anger out. I don't really want to be angry anymore. I'm ready to move on.
Mhm.
Pets can be a great way to start that process of letting the walls down a little bit and reconnecting with something loving without condition, without judgment. Yeah, without fear.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, they are the epitome of unconditional love.
Indeed, the wagging tail on
Uh-huh.
a dog and the purring on a cat have been measured to be at zone 4 level. They're at the inspired level. So when your dog is wagging its tail or your cat is purring really loudly, they are totally in that peace, joy, love vibration. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about you get to the acceptance mode. What are you thinking, feeling, doing as it starts to be like, okay, this is my reality.
Reality.
This is my reality. Because that's really what the zone 1 and the zone 2 is. I can't face my reality right now.
Mhm.
And there's protection in that.
Yes, very much so. I think with that, a lot of the mind talk that I needed was mom would not want me to live miserable.
Mm,
And that's what helped motivate me to not only allow joy in, but seek it and
yeah.
feel like it was okay. Not feel guilty. I mean, we're a laughing family. We always joke about, the most inappropriate situations where there shouldn't be laughter. There is always laughter in our family. So it's not
Right.
laughter ever left my life. But, we kind of have a dark, twisted sense of humor.
Laughter helps to lighten the load. It
Yes.
does. Yeah.
So it was, not so much being that snarky, sarcastic, cutting things up and chopping them with my black sword. It was more, recognizing the joy around me, the beauty around me again, which everything had just gone dark. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then to make peace with, in that process of making peace with your mom's passing, um, which, so people who kind of recoil at the thought because maybe you're kind of early in your grief process and you can't even imagine ever getting to a place where you're at peace with it. But Judy, what did your mom's passing, what gifts were in it for your journey that have changed who you are and made you more able to contribute to the world today?
I think after going through what with my mom, I would never dream to say I understood everything she went through.
Mm-mm.
Um, the whole experience taught me to be your own advocate and stop being such a harsh judge of myself because
Yeah.
she judged herself very harshly. And I don't think she ever truly allowed herself to realize how amazing she was and how many people loved her
Right.
just for who she was and the
Mm,
light she brought to their lives. Because I don't think we really understood until the people started coming forward with the stories. And it was
right.
my brother's friends and my sister's friends and my other sister's friends and my friends and people that we didn't even know she talked to. She talked to a cousin of mine almost every day. We had no idea. Really. We had no idea that she was supporting so many other people because it wasn't something she talked about. It's just who she was.
Mm,
I mean, I don't there was standing room only in the church for her service and things like that just didn't really register with us.
right.
So once all that was, I was allowed to really process and see all of those things. It was like, wow, she went through life beating the hell out of herself, not thinking she was enough. And look at how she served so many people.
Yeah.
And
Let's
that,
highlight that. I mean, really highlight that for people. So when you get up each day and you're beating yourself up, how many people in the world are, ask yourself, how many people today are grateful for who you are and the attention that you pay to them, right? It's not even so much what you do to them, but that you care that they exist is a great gift.
It is, and I feel like that's something more and more people are realizing. You don't have to have a ton of money. You don't have to get your hands involved in all these charities or anything. You just have to show up and
Mhm.
care.
Yeah,
Genuinely, authentically care. People want to be seen and heard. And when people are seen and heard, they feel appreciated and valued. And when we're struggling to find value in ourselves, it's always nice to see that other people value us.
absolutely.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big thing I've learned over the years,
Mm,
experiencing what I did with my mom.
yeah. That's beautiful. And so we do have to reframe um, the loss as, kind of that set of memories. I had all these beautiful memories with this beautiful person. And then actually going through this painful process together, as they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You now have a lot more wisdom from your own personal experience that you can share with other people who are going through what is, one of the hardest of human experiences.
Yes. Yes. And it was interesting because my daughter and I went to breakfast before the show. And I said, hey, the topic of the show today is grief. You got any input? And she was like, no, I don't know that I'm real qualified to talk about that. And I was like, really? Why not? And she was like, I haven't experienced grief like you have. I said, it's not a competition. Everybody's experienced it in one way or another. And she's like, well, mom, it's kind of different. When you have somebody who is older and dies of old age, they've lived their whole life. Yes, you're going to grieve. You're going to grieve, but that grief to me would seem different than um, like she has a cousin that was killed in a car accident at 18. She was
Right.
like, that's very different from when that happened. That's a
Mhm.
different grief. And I was like, that's an excellent point. It
Yeah.
really is, because the old age we can rationalize. Well, they lived a good life. And yes, we're sad that they're gone, but you know, they lived a good life. Whereas an 18-year-old taken in an accident and through trauma hits very differently,
Yeah.
unexpected.
Yeah, and absolutely good point. We all kind of know what to say to the person who lost somebody in an expected circumstance. We've we've said it, we've heard it in movies and on television. We
Read
kind of
books about.
know. Yeah, yeah. So we know what to say, but in these unexpected crises, a few things happen. One, suddenly we don't know what to say. And the other thing is we start to feel like we're on less solid ground ourselves than we felt like prior to the emergency. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like there are no words. There are no words. What do you say to that? So
Right.
people stumble, and in that we talk a lot about being comfortable in the uncomfortable. It's very difficult to be comfortable in that uncomfortable, because the devastation, the deep sorrow and pain that people are feeling as a result of it. What do you do?
Right. And that's kind of the best that you can offer to somebody who's in that place of deep sorrow and pain is to show up authentically and say, I don't know what to say because I would love to soothe your deep sorrow and pain. And I know that's not possible. So you tell me how you'd like me to support you,
Yeah.
right? Would you like me to just sit with you? Would you like to go for a walk? You could perhaps offer, would you like me to leave you alone? You can offer suggestions. And then whatever that person says, make it clear that that's great. I'll respect that. And if you change your mind and want something else tomorrow, I'm going to trust you to let me know.
Yeah, and I know a difficult part of that is in those moments, they're in zone 1, so they really don't know what they need.
That's right.
They really don't have any idea. So, I know when it happened with me, I was just there. I was
Yep.
present, I was doing dishes, I was, receiving casseroles, and then beyond that period, like we talked about, okay, so all that's over. Now what?
Right.
The only thing I knew to do, I had quit teaching by this point, and the only thing I could think to give her peace of mind is this next year is going to be hard. So I signed up to sub because she's a PE teacher. I'm a PE teacher.
Hmm.
I wanted her to know that any morning she woke up and she just couldn't do it, call me. I'll come in and take your classes for you. I'll sub for you. And you don't have
Yeah.
to worry. That was the only thing that I felt I could do to bring her any kind of peace,
Well, it's huge.
is
Yeah.
knowing, if she wakes up and today it's a no, call me and I'm in there.
Yeah. That's huge. And that's a perfect example of something that you could get in touch with because of your experience with your mom,
Yeah.
because you knew what it felt like to get up and have this be a no day.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And then force myself to, well, there's no other way for me. I can't say no. I can't say no. I have these things that I have to do.
Right.
There's nobody that'll step in and do this for me. So yeah, I
Right.
did. It's funny, I didn't even put that together till right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's fun about this process, right? Grief isn't fun. Talking about it, all of us, every human experiences grief. And as we talk about it and share it, it makes it lighter. The things that we don't look at, the things that we're afraid to talk about, are the things that we end up carrying. And so, as we talk about how long do we carry our grief, the more we're able to talk about it and process it and just tell our truth, whatever that is, the faster we'll be able to turn that grief into something that we carry with a lightness of heart so that we can remember the special memories and honor the person or whatever it is in our lives that we've left behind. We'll be able to honor that without going into those feelings of, zone 1 or zone 2, which are really out of control feelings that don't do justice to the person or the situation that we lost, and certainly don't do justice to us after a certain point.
No, and I'm glad you brought up this situation because we're not just talking about grief from losing a loved one. We're talking about grief in transition and life transitions.
Hmm.
They say you close in one door and opening another. Well, you close that one door and there's grief involved in that process.
Yeah.
You know, divorces, retirement. My father retired and he was a mess.
Mhm.
And the world expects you to be excited because you're retired.
Right.
My brother's retired. I have friends that have retired, and they all talk about how lost they feel because every morning they woke up with a purpose.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden it's gone, and the world expects you to be celebratory and woo woo. My father jokes about starting a support group. I think it would be fabulous.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, another one is if you close down a business,
Hmm.
or, you move out of a home that you love. Like I know some people during the early days of COVID who thought, oh no, that, people on commission, for example, who made good money and then all of a sudden everything just shut down and they said, uh oh, and they moved out of the home that they loved into a more affordable living situation. And, they weren't allowed um, to grieve the loss of their home because they were working so hard to convince everybody that they were perfectly okay with something that they clearly could not have been perfectly okay with.
And that's an excellent point, too. When you don't allow yourself and honor the emotion of grief to speak it, when you feel it's something that needs to be tucked away and hidden, then it just makes it grows and it becomes a big, mean, nasty beast.
Yeah. Indeed, it does.
Yeah. It becomes that beast in the closet, the boogeyman that you're afraid of under your bed. And it builds up to this, well, I can't cry because if I start, I'll never stop. which, I've felt that way myself. I've heard many people say that. And it's so our whole point is let's move through this and not let the monster grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be-
And everybody, I mean, we've heard a lot of people say, and we've said it ourselves, if I start crying, I'll never stop. And it seems very convincing, when you say that to yourself. But we've seen a lot of people cry and we've done a lot of crying. Has it ever occurred, Judy, that people don't stop crying?
You stop when you're supposed to stop.
Yeah, you do.
When you have cleared what needs to be cleared for that moment, then it
Yeah.
stops.
Yeah, you do. And it's funny. I mean, most people don't cry more than maybe 5 minutes. Like that's a long cry. We think that it's huge because it builds up, 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 and it needs to be released. But then it's actually not, we're not going to dehydrate ourselves in the crying process. We just need to let the steam
Yeah.
off the system. Yeah.
And it's interesting because that takes me back to, when I got divorced, I was the one that initiated it. So it was felt that I had no right to be sad.
Right.
I had no right to grieve because I was the one that asked for it.
Right.
Where I don't know how many days I was on my knees in the shower crying because I didn't want anybody else to know that I was, because I didn't feel like I had a right to.
Yeah.
You know, there's a grieving process that we go through, and the first step is honor how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
No one can tell you you deserve to grieve. If
Right.
that's what you're feeling, then that's what you need to do, and that is the truth of your emotions.
Yep.
Nobody else can dictate what you're allowed to feel and what you're not allowed to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have people, if you were to say to people, I'm grieving right now, I'm in the process of grieving, and somebody judges you and tells you, you shouldn't be grieving, go find some people who can support you in your process. And don't change the truth, or don't try to adjust the truth of what you're thinking, feeling, and doing, what you're experiencing, to fit somebody else's random idea of what ought to be happening in your life right now. Let's be truthful about our experience and then find people, if we don't have them, who value the fact that we have the courage to be truthful.
Yeah. And the when I went through the divorce process, it wasn't so much. It definitely was not my immediate family. It was more me. I didn't feel like I had the right to grieve because I just blew up people's lives.
Sure. And where did you get that idea though, right? So you didn't make that up in a vacuum.
No, I did not.
Yeah. So we get a lot of, we get a lot of instruction from watching our family and listening to them and watching television and movies and all those fun things, and learning this is what the expectation is. So we're usually pretty clear on what the expectation is. And when we find out that our experience is different from that expectation, this is the thing that I love most about our society. Is that we've been trained to assume that the problem is not the expectation, but is rather our experience.
Yes, exactly.
There
Life
must
is,
be some.
what have we been saying this week, Chris? Life has been bumper stickers and bullshit.
We're getting t-shirts, I'm telling you. All week we're like, just more bumper stickers and bullshit.
And we are
So
the bumper stickers and bullshit. So we're going with what is our truth.
that's right. Your experience is true. Trust that.
Yes.
Yeah. And look at
That's,
this. Janice, thanks for the validation of my feelings around grieving when others may not think you should. Yeah, you're welcome.
you're very welcome.
Thank you for letting us know that landed, Janice, because I mean, really, we're here. As much fun as Judy and I have doing this, we're actually here broadcasting it to help other people. And so it really warms our hearts, and inspires us to know that it's landing and that you're finding it helpful.
Yes. Thank you, Janice. Yeah. So it's funny because I go back to, okay, so how long do you have to carry your grief? In my belief, I don't I don't know that the grief is ever gone.
Mm.
I've I'm still learning, as we know from a couple shows ago. I'm still learning to deal with these levels of grief that continue to surface. So,
Mm,
is it gone? No, but do I handle it better? I do. I
mm,
feel like I definitely handle it better. And for me, that's a win.
yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because really you're carrying the grief, but you're not doing it in a zone one way.
No.
And I think this is maybe the kernel or the core of the message, that it's not that you're ever going to celebrate the loss of a loved one or a loved situation. um we're not looking to celebrate that, but the fact that we can take that grief and we can move through the stages.
Hmm.
We're now not technically carrying grief. um we're carrying fond memories, and the truth of, there was something precious to me that I lost.
Hmm.
So we can carry that truth without being in the washing machine, or without, stabbing at the world with the big scary beast, behind us. Because we're standing going, yeah, I'm fine. Why? What's wrong with you? Having no idea, and then we wonder why people react the way they do, right? Not
Yeah.
realizing that they can see the big, fanged beast right over our heads,
Right.
that's saying, back off, Jack, because I'm not to be messed with. I mean, that's part of that self protection, when we frankly just had all we can take of the zone one washing machine.
Right. Yeah. It just reminded me of Ross on Friends going, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, I was left fine. I like the pursed lip fine.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite. I'm me. Why? I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, so if you're watching the show for the first time or listening, remember you can get your own map to download and have for your very own personal work at www.masterfulu.com. Is that called a backslash? Get
Forward.
forward, sorry. Get dash, right?
Hmm.
Your dash map.
Yes. Yes. All these things that, when you type this, it's really easy. You don't have, but when you speak it out for the radio listeners,
Oh,
it is a little more challenging. We're not used to saying it.
well, and you have all the computer slang or whatever. I don't know all the words.
You're not
I
missing out.
do enjoy saying www.masterful, masterfulu.com forward get get dash your your dash map map.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so do it. And then you'll see that you can follow along on the show, and you can work through your piece. You can submit questions to us. You can do it during the show, or you can do it on Facebook or YouTube. You can submit comments, and we will answer your questions here on the show. And we'll do it. If you want us to do that anonymously, just tell us. And we can do it. Obviously, people will see your comments on Facebook, but I mean, on the show, we can do it anonymously. You can also email us, uh, Kris, Kris Burke, Burke, at masterfulu.com. And we'll just give you one so we don't have to spell the whole show. And yeah, and you can just send us a message and ask a question, and we'd be happy to bring it on the show and bring it up and work it through the map with you.
Absolutely. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can always go to our Facebook page,
Hmm?
the Peaceful Empowerment Works show, and message us through that if you prefer.
Yes. Yes, and don't forget workshops. Workshop is coming up, Taste of Peace, on Monday, August 14th at 7 p.m. That's a 2-hour workshop. And there is another one on Tuesday, August 15th at noon. That's from noon to 2 for those people who um, have like prefer midday, have more energy perhaps for this sort of process in midday and have the time available. So yeah.
Yes. And those times are Eastern Standard Times.
Hmm.
So, we know we went through a 40-minute dissertation on grief, and we went through a lot of information. Um, and everybody grieves in their own way. We like to say, we give an outline. Nobody's alone. Don't be afraid to speak your truth, and find people that love and support you through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And just know that however long you're carrying the grief, you're entitled, you have the right to be in each stage for as long as you choose. And when you're done with the stage, you'll move on to the next one naturally. And if you find that's difficult and you feel stuck, reach out for help.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we have the 3 levels of engagement. We have the show, of course, that you can get every Thursday for free. We have the workshops for a minimal fee, and then we have our 12-week program. So to
Yeah.
check out any of those things, you can go to our website at www.masterfulu.com.
Fantastic. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you
Thanks,
for joining.
Judy.
Thank you, Kris. We'll see you all next week.
Okay.